welcome, Tara, to Utah Book Scene.
Thank you.
We are really happy to have you.
I look forward to being here.
Now, you have 2 books published, is that correct?
I do. I have Sanders Starfish that came out in 2004, and then I have Unauthored Letters, which we published this spring.
This spring, and who are you published with?
TM Publishing.
Is that both books or TM Publishing?
This one was with Bonneville Books.
Oh, okay, cool. Now, I understand you grew up in California, is that right?
I did.
And what area?
Southern California, the San Bernardino Mountains, and that's actually where I set both of my books. It's a beautiful area. It's about 80 miles from Los Angeles. A lot of people go up there. It's a tourist place. So being a child there and seeing so much activity, it really was a perfect setting for some suspense novels to take place.
And Tara, this is your first book we have here. This was published a few years ago?
Yes.
Called Sanders Starfish. Would you tell me about it?
Sure. It's a psychological suspense novel. It takes place in the San Bernardino Mountains, which is about 80 miles from Los Angeles. It's a tourist town, but there's some hidden parts of the mountain. And here there's a psychiatric hospital. So Sanders Starfish is about a young doctor who comes and he's planning to change the world. He really believes he can make a difference in that facility. And what he comes up against is a woman who's been there for several years, and she has given up on life. She has no desire to associate with anyone around her. She's just very hung up in this delusion of a baby that she cares for. So it's a blanket that she carries around and takes care of. But Dr. Sanders eventually finds out that there's more going on at the hospital than he realized. And so it's a reality for him to come to find out how hard it is to seek after your dreams, especially when there's internal and external forces working against you.
Okay. I think that really sounds fascinating. Psychiatric hospital in a gorgeous setting.
Yes.
And I, as a writer, have a hard time with setting, with sense of place. So tell me how sense of place in the San Bernardino Mountains, how that worked for you.
It's interesting because it was very hard for me at first to find a setting for it. I knew since I was 16 years old, I had read an account, a nonfiction account of a woman in a hospital, and she kind of spurred the character for this novel. But finding a place was really hard, and for whatever reason, you kind of gravitate away from the places you know well. But I grew up in the San Bernardino Mountains, moved there when I was 16, stayed there for 6 years and loved it. It was just a beautiful area. There's just something about winding up those mountain roads to get to your destination. When the fog rolls in, it can be very, very scary. Something that's really hard to see what's ahead of you. The pine trees are gorgeous, and it's an area where lots of people come, but there's also that privacy and some of that secrecy, so it was an excellent place to put a psychiatric
for a thriller.
Hospital.
Yes. Yes. Ooh, a little bit spooky.
And we have one of those where there's a nice storm, the electricity goes out, and some things really scare some of the residents there and cause a little bit more terror than normal.
Oh, well, it sounds really cool. But you also have a book coming out this spring?
Yes.
And tell us about that one.
This will be with TM Publishing, and I'm very excited about it. It's called Unauthored Letters, and it originally was going to be a sequel to Sanders Starfish, and it is, but after a lot of time, I realized I wanted it to stand alone. And so what it does is it covers 18 years, so it's a time span of 18 years, whereas Sanders Starfish is just a 1-year period of time. And so the novel starts in 1984, and it begins with Rebecca Burnell, who happens to be one of the characters here. Starts with her life. It begins right after her father has died. He actually has committed suicide, and he has left her in the care of a guardian, Rick Donnelly, but he actually gets written out of the will. He still is asked to be the guardian of this young girl and the executor over the estate, but the original arrangement was there was a lot of money that was going to be passed over to him upon this man's death, and he got cut out of the will.
Ooh.
So it starts out with somebody
Money.
very upset and in a position where he can really make some things difficult for some people.
Very cool.
And then it goes on to several years are shown through the novel, but eventually Rebecca both my books deal a lot with dreams and aspirations. John Sanders was to be this psychologist who would make a difference in Sanders Starfish. Unauthored Letters is about Rebecca's dream to have this family and to really have a fulfilling life. She starts out with a very unfulfilling life and struggles with some mental illness that puts her in a very lower place than a lot of us recognize in our daily life. And so to have her go after this aspiration of having a home and a family that she just feels is so complete is really her dream. And she reaches it about midway through the novel, and things are really going well for her until manifestations of her illness return and really set her in a series of fear. But even worse is her family members truly believe she has reverted back. And then these letters appear, which is hence the title, Unauthored Letters, which play into some of the delusions she's seen, but her family is struggling to know if she's the author. Yes.
And okay, so you don't know whether she's made up these, whether, I've got it.
The author, yes,
okay.
Of these letters.
So you've got thrillers here, or suspense, and I don't quite know where you find the line on that. But tell me, do they have an uplift?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that, because my background's in psychology, and from a young age I wanted to write. I went to school to get a degree in psychology because I had this dream. When you're young and you think you can do anything, my dream was to take all these principles of psychology and put them into fictional stories, so people who don't have that background could read and learn interactions with people, relationships, personalities, all sorts of different things, but in a fun, engaging way. So that had been my plan, but when I started to get into writing books, generally people pick up a novel because they want to be entertained. So to have kind of trying to push that lesson, it just isn't compelling enough for a reader. So I really found that I was drawn to suspense, where there was, okay, what happens next? And this page-turning ability to find out what would happen more in the story. But I still couldn't let go of the psychology background. I did tons of research for this one. Fortunately, I haven't been in a psychiatric hospital, but it was important for me to have it as real as I possibly could. And I've since had readers talk to me who have had some experiences that are similar to some of the people in my book, and they told me that there is some accuracy there. So it's been really nice to do the research and to pull some of that in.
Well, I think both of these sound fascinating, Tara. Thank you so much for coming and letting us interview you, and best of luck, especially on your new book. And thank you, Tara C. Allred, and this is Utah Book Scene with Susan Phelan.